Good morning, welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. At the weekend, we lost three, what I would call significant figures. Certainly one of them was an absolute legend. George Foreman, of course, passed, which was very, very sad. Livingston Bramble, I think, sinfully forgotten, but very, very underrated lightweight champ, WBA lightweight champ. He passed away too. Very, very good fighter who scored some excellent wins. Ended up with a lot of losses on his record because he just fought for too long and fought anyone for paychecks, but a very good fighter. But we also lost Colin Hart, who was a British journalist who died, I think he was 89, hadn't quite made it to his 90th birthday, but he passed away. And that's the one that the reactions have been the most interesting about for me personally. Because I said in the description box of the tribute to Colin Hart that I did, the video that I did, I said, look, he was a Marmite character. And a lot of people didn't like him. And a lot of people thought he was, he talked a lot of bollocks, basically. And guess what? As I said in my video, he did. There were times when I'd go, what is he talking about? And, and there are other times when I'd say, I think to myself, he's absolutely on the money. His predictions, generally speaking, were very, very good. He predicted that Muhammad Ali would beat George Foreman. He predicted that Michael Watson would knock out Nigel Benn, and he picked the round. And of course, we all get those wrong sometimes. I certainly do. But he was this, love him or hate him character. Now, this is the thing for me. When you get people like that, who rub people up the wrong way and are frequently contrary and ask awkward questions and make you think, make you question your own opinions, I think, good for you. That's what a journalist should do. And Colin was someone, he didn't really stand on ceremony. There's a very famous quote. I think Steve Bunce mentioned this recently after Colin had died. He said that because George Foreman, of course, passed the same day, and Bunce said there was an incident where Colin was in the presence of George, and Colin was a smoker. He liked the cigarette, so he put a cigarette on, sparked one up, and Foreman said, "Put that out now," and Colin said, "Not till you say please." I like that. And Colin banged heads with a lot of fighters because he wouldn't lick arse. I mean, the most obvious example is Nassim Hamed, who hated Colin, and Colin famously celebrated when Hamed was beaten, because I think this stemmed from Colin had a column in The Sun, which is a shit rag of a paper, ghastly, disgusting, tawdry piece of Rupert Murdoch trash. So I suppose that's a black mark against him for earning a living through that bunch of degenerates, possibly so. But he wrote in there that Hamed could not box. That is to say, Hamed did not have a conventional boxing style. He was all about athleticism. He was all about pure power, being completely unorthodox, doing everything technically wrong. And Hamed said, he took umbrage to this because Colin didn't like Hamed's manner either. I don't like Hamed. I've never liked him as a man. As a fighter, very exciting, explosive, unique talent, but I never liked him. I'd hate all that showboating crap. It's not for me. I find it boring. Really boring. I think he was very disrespectful to people who were leagues beneath his talent. He was knocking out journeymen and pouncing around, by dancing over them. And all right, well, that to me is a sign of a kind of a cheap thug, really, or someone whose ego is just out of control. And it was his ego that brought his downfall, Hamed, because you remember that there's a documentary, isn't there, that about the camp from hell that he had before the Barrera fight, and then Barrera dominated him and basically slapped him around. And Hamed was never the same. He had one more fight against Spanish guy. Yeah, I know that. I see him in my mind's eye. I can't remember his name. Miguel, someone. And then he won that. I think he won the IBO title, and he walked away, Ahmed. So it was purely ego-driven, and I don't like people like that. They just bore me. I've just got no. I wouldn't associate with people like that in the real world. So if I'm watching boxing, people like that, I don't like them. And Colin Hart didn't like him. Didn't like Ahmed as a person. He didn't hide it. He didn't lick arse. He said, no, you can't box. Ahmed was like, what do you mean I can't box? Of course I can box. And they were spitting nails at each other. I don't like you at all. I think you're a fool and all this sort of. All right, you think I'm a fool? Fill your boots, mate. But that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. So somebody that rubs everyone up the wrong way, I always think, it's like, for example, the BBC. Let's take that as an example. The BBC gets a lot of flack from people on the left. I'm talking about the real left, not this sort of woke liberal crap, but the proper people who have proper left-wing politics. They criticise the BBC. They're too right-wing. And then the people on the right, like all this old conservative trash, they will say, well, they're a bunch of lefties, the BBC. Well, if both sides hate the BBC, immediately I think they must be doing something right, because they're winding both sides up. And don't get me wrong, I've got plenty of criticisms about the BBC. I mean, the age I am, I remember, the 1970s. That was my childhood, the 1970s. And of course, it came out that in the 1970s, BBC was fucking non-central. So yeah, I've got plenty of criticisms of the BBC, but I'm just using them as an example to illustrate the point that if you wind both sides up, if you wind everyone up, you're probably doing something right. And with Colin was a proper journalist. He way for decades predated the internet, which is now instead of having journalists who can actually write, who understand some history of the game, we have, sort of clout chasing kids with cameras, shove it in a fighter's face, get an interview, stick it on YouTube, and then call themselves some sort of video journalist. I think that's bollocks. I think a real journalist should be able to write, intelligent, concise, insightful, in-depth pieces. And sadly, those people are leaving us. Not all of them. There are some younger ones, Tris Dixon's very good. Rob Tebbett's very good. He's one of the better, what you might call video journalists, for want of a better phrase. And there are a few others, and they normally come from Boxing News, which is the trade paper, where you've got to be a good writer. If you haven't subscribed to Boxing News, you really should, because it's excellent. Really, really excellent. Even now, 116 years it's been going. Anyway, I just thought I'd add a few thoughts about Colin Hart, because it was a terrible weekend for boxing, losing all these people. Yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm talking sense or not. Whether you agree or not, that's fine if you don't. See, this is the art of debate, which has been lost in the modern world, where people can disagree and argue and keep an open mind and sometimes say, all right, you've got a point. I'll take that on board, rather than ignorantly wallowing in willful ignorance and just making it a case of who can shout the loudest. See, that's the thing about the advent of the internet. It gave every fucking moron a voice. And suddenly it's almost like, well, the truth is just much of a muchness. I can shout louder than you. I can pick up more followers. I can get more likes than you. Therefore, I'm right. No, think for a second. Bear in mind that, everyone in the world at one point thought the earth was flat. Well, a few of these daft cunts still do, but you know what I mean? Everyone used to think the world was flat. And never, you would have been laughed at if you said the world was round. Well, the planet's actually egg-shaped. People think it's spherical, but it's more or less egg-shaped. But anyway, that's not the point. But anyway, look, if you've got any comments, leave them below. And yeah, thanks a lot. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel. Build it up. Come on, let's build it up. And thanks very much for your time. Bye for now.